back with another episode of the Blue Turf. This is Thad Bell from the KC Soccer Journal. With me, I have Erik Bergrud, who now has played every part of the Comets broadcast team at least once.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy. Hey, thanks, Thad. How you doing? I was mentioning to Brian Budzinski, who was my partner for the UCFC game. I think I've done it all. I've done a little bit of PA, play-by-play on TV, color on TV. I've done the on the field interviewing, and I actually did a radio play-by-play last year's playoff wildcard game against UCFC. I was on the radio here in Kansas City, so I think I've touched all bases. Plus the podcast.
And you're all around talent there. What do you actually enjoy the more? I mean, the play by play, the color, the
Well, first of all you have to do is substitute for somebody else, and then you really appreciate how good they are. I learned that when I substituted for Nate Herron on PA. It's a really difficult job. I learned that really quickly doing on the field, and I found this out doing Nick Vassos's job. Just managing everything is really, really tough. And I tried a system to organize my UCFC stats, and it didn't work until like the second quarter, where I kind of figured out here's where I find everybody's name. So the way that Nick has his game prep organized, I have a lot of respect for how he does his job.
and I think that is always just really not where the pod normally goes, but I think this is a example of people who are professional and try to be prepared, because I know I've listened to some broadcasts where I know those people were not prepared at the slightest.
And I thought I was prepared. I just apparently needed to do it once. And we should have had a counter for how many times either Bud or I called each other Nick. It was starting to get hysterical. You just out of habit. When you broadcast with Nick, I turn over and say, "What do you think, Nick?" And it's Bud.
Yeah, that they don't look at all alike.
They don't.
All right, to the on the field stuff. Comets have gotten some good results lately.
Yeah, it started in California with we talked about this on our last episode, and at the time, I don't know if you remember this stat. I mentioned there was a tightening playoff race between Kansas City and Baltimore, and I said, here's what you're going to want to watch out for. How many points will the Comets get in Southern California? And then how many points will the Blast get when they had their Mexico trip coming? So the
Yep.
Comets went out, San Diego, one of the biggest wins the Comets have had ever at Pechanga Arena, 9-4 win. And then they had a one-goal win a few nights later up in Ontario against the Strikers. The Blast just had their Mexico trip. They lost in Chihuahua and actually kept that game really competitive. They were up against Monterey and lost in overtime. So the Comets got the full 6 points in California. The Blast only got one in Mexico. And as we stand right now, the Comets are 1 point short of guaranteeing that fourth playoff spot in the Eastern Conference.
So the Comets need a point, or they need the Blast to drop a point. That's it.
That's it. And so we'll look ahead at the schedule in a little bit, but the Comets have 2 games remaining. The Blast have 5 games remaining. It would be mathematically improbable. I mean, it's possible, but improbable for Baltimore to run the table completely and Kansas City not to get at least 1 point. Could it happen? Sure, but it's not likely.
What is the tiebreaker in case that happens?
Head-to-head is the first one, if I recall correctly, and Baltimore does own the tiebreaker since Kansas City lost at Baltimore earlier this season.
Yeah, that leaves a sad taste. I do doubt that the Comets can't at least earn 1 point in the next 2 games, or the Blast run the table. So I don't think that'll happen.
There's always, every year you look back with regrets. The previous home game, Kansas City played St. Louis, and they were up early and let that one slip, only to save themselves at the end of regulation and overtime. But that was the extra point right there that would have put them in. But you can't look backward, you can only look forward. But if you go back to that previous week, 3 points on a Sunday in San Diego, 3 points on a Wednesday at Empire, and then 2 points at home against St. Louis, in one of the most exciting games I can ever remember. That's a pretty good 8-point streak there.
It is. You would have thought that the Comets could have taken all three at home against St. Louis, but again, with the last four games taking all but 1 point is pretty impressive.
Well, and in our previous episode before that California trip, I had said success in California would be 4 points. So they topped my expectations in terms of what to reasonably expect. And they're on a good roll right now. Even going way back to the Chihuahua game, way back, it just feels like way back where they gave the defending champs all they could and probably should have won that game, losing that 1-3-2. I think that what you're seeing is a younger team out on the field, a team that's playing for each other, a team that's fired up too. And the last couple games have really fed on the crowd. You could barely hear yourself think, let alone talk in Cable Dome Arena, both of that St. Louis game and then the Utica City game.
And I do really want to point out the crowd in that St. Louis game because it was opening night for Sporting Kansas City across town. So you had soccer fans competing to go both places, and both of them were sellouts. Both of them were really great crowds. So kudos to the Kansas City soccer fans.
Yeah, they can walk and chew gum at the same time. It's pretty good. So, I mean, there's a broader soccer community than just one team, I think, is the takeaway on that. And so, a good positive homestand for Kansas City. They go back. We still need to talk about the Utica City game, but then they head to St. Louis, and we'll talk about playoff seeding because that becomes really important as you think, where could Kansas City finish, and then back home against the 16-time champions San Diego Soccer. Is that game? I've already heard ticket sales been going fast, so if you haven't bought your tickets yet, you better hurry up. And San Diego has a bad taste in its mouth. They lost 9-4 at home. They're not supposed to lose by 5 goals at home, let alone lose at home.
Oh, absolutely. But I just want to call out it's the good run for the Comets because if I look at this correctly, they're not have been all as good as they would have wanted, but that's 7 results that they've gotten at least a point, 2 points, 3 points, and it's kind of showing that the team's, I would say, rounding into form. You just dominated Utica for 3 of the 4 quarters.
Yep.
Uh, so I'm just very happy with how the Comets are kind of playing right now. I don't think that they are a championship going to Monterey and Chihuahua and win those games necessarily, but they are performing so much better.
Well, I think if we saw a couple results in Monterey, Comets showed when they went down there that they can compete with Monterey on the road. Baltimore had Monterey on the ropes this past Sunday, and Monterey came back at the end of the game. And so anything is possible, particularly when you get into the home and away plus extra time game to settle the winner. And so yeah, if you're the Comets, if you're like any of the teams in the East, you probably don't want to play Monterey in the first round of the playoffs.
No.
And that's why these next couple games are going to be critical, because the seeding of 2, 3, and 4, if you're the fourth team, you draw Monterey. If you're 2 and 3, you catch a break a little bit.
Yeah, and the 4 seed again would even if they win that first round, they would have the disadvantage in the second round.
Well, I
Um,
mean, we'll see what we'll see. I mean, first of all, you make the playoffs, right? So Kansas City needs some version of one more point. After that, then it's how can you max out your position, and what can you do on your own, and where you need some help. For the Comets, they're going to need a little bit of help to get above fourth place, and we can talk about that after we recap UCFC.
all right, so back to Utica or the game against Utica in Kansas City. Just trying to make sure I say that clearly. Started off well with Rion with a goal, but then I think 4 straight goals from Utica. Uh, I I arrived a little bit late, so I came in and Rion had already scored, and then I got to see a bunch of Utica goals.
Yeah, and
Not the way to start.
no, definitely not the way to start. And if you miss the game or miss the broadcast too, I think Brian Budzinski was pretty fair in terms of his criticism of the Comets defense on a few goals, too many easy opportunities. But what we saw from the Comets was the resilience that has been missing at earlier stretches of the season. They came out of the first quarter down 4-1 and then piled on 6 goals in that second quarter to go to halftime up 7-5. And we saw the Rion Marquez show. We saw the Zach Reget show. Zach had 4 goals, and Christian Anderaos was a wild man out there. Scored 2 goals, one on a beautiful lifted pass from Berto, and then the other he just pressed Mo Ndi in the corner and wound up toe poking one in past Andrew Coughlin. And so it was a great first half. Then all of a sudden we're back at the what's going to happen in the third quarter. And what happened in the third quarter, the Comets did not relent. And they scored 3 more goals. This is the first time I can remember seeing them really play a consistent second and third quarter in quite some time. They outscored Utica 9-2 combined in those 2 quarters. And one final goal in the fourth, and that was all she wrote.
So, a little story about Christian's goal. He talked to him after the game. He told the story about how earlier in the year when they played, and he tried to do that same thing, and he was just physically pushed off the ball. He said he's been working to strengthen himself and get stronger and tougher in that same thing. And in this case, he took the ball off of the player, the exact same player, and got the goal. And he did tell the player about how he had give him the motivation to get stronger and better, and then score the goal on him.
Which is what you like to see. And so he wound up being the second star of the game. Zach was number one. Rion was the third star. They all had good games. I guess the one thing about Rion, he got in some tussles with Nelson Santana, which led to a blue card and a yellow card, and also led to the Comets fans booing Nelson Santana every time he had the ball. But if you get a chance to watch the replay, I mentioned this on air. Sometimes it's not the first infraction that gets seen; it's the second one, and that's what happened to Rion.
Yeah, that's I think that's pretty common when you mess with Santana, actually.
Well, and he's a cagey, wily veteran. I mentioned
Yep.
on air. He's won 3 championships. He knows what he's doing, and that's why he's there.
Oh yeah, you have to give him credit for all that. He's always been a player I haven't really personally liked very well, but I'll do credit to what he does and how he conducts, how he takes advantage of the situations in the games. So he's smart player in that regard.
Yeah, to be fair, UCFC was down a lot of players. They went into Milwaukee short some of the big names. Frank Taiu hurt, Taylor Walter Bond hurt, Tim Goldman out, and Nate Bordeaux's been out for the year. So they were already short. Milton DeAndrade, can't forget him. He was out too. So a lot of firepower. Coming out of halftime, Rafa Godoy and Gordy Gerson out. And so they played the second half with 14 players? And you could see the legs and everything just went out. At the end of the game, they were in sixth attack or barely attacking, and I think they were pretty well done. But Kansas City did what they needed to do. And to be fair to the Comets, they were up at halftime, so they took care of business when UCFC at least had their 16 players they brought to Kansas City. At this point of the year, everybody's dealing with injuries. Everybody's dealing with challenges, and the question is, how do you manage them when they hit your team?
Yeah, and I know that we will sometimes kind of disagree on some of that because sometimes if you're missing your big players, it is a big blow. I mean, you can always use the analogy or the statement you have to take care of business no matter who you have, no matter who you play and all that stuff. But it is a reality that losing big players matters. When Comets are missing Zach or Rion. We talked about how Rion being hurt earlier in the year had made it harder for them. So I do want to give credit to Utica and at least make sure that that is a fair comparison. We would criticize the Comets if they didn't take care of business I don't want to give them the total same slack, but I want it to go both ways, I guess.
No, I agree with that. I guess the point I'm saying is every fan base points to, oh, we had injuries. Well, every team has injuries, and
Yeah,
so it's just sort of a
some are
question of
bigger
when
than
they hit
others.
you. Some are bigger than others. It's when they hit you in the year and how you adapt at that time.
All right, great run of play there in the second period, second quarter at Rion, Zach, Christian, Christian, and Zach again. That was a fun quarter to watch.
That was they were down. So keep in mind they were down 4-1 coming out of the first, battled back um, to 5-4, and then Anderaos ties it after Birdo sends a ball from his defensive third up towards the yellow line, and Andreas gets a first touch on it one-on-one against Alava, turned Alava, and then toe poked it in, and the place went absolutely nuts. And at that point, it was 5-5. That for me was the turning point. It got extremely loud in that place. Andreas scored again, and Comets started to pile it on.
One of the obviously Zach always gets a lot of attention for the amount of goals he scores, can score, all of those things. I think one of his greatest strengths is that not only is he a goal scorer, not only does he play more defense and he sometimes is given credit for it, but it's just the passion, the emotion, the he uplifts the team by the way he celebrates, the way he sometimes gets mad at his team, but it's just the passion that he plays with kind of lifts the team up to play better.
100% agree with that. I think uh, for a non-captain, he has the qualities that you want as a team leader. And I can't say enough about Nacho as captain. That when the change was made, which was after that Tacoma game, and you see the difference with the team with Nacho as captain. No disrespect to Ramon Palmer. Ramon's a lot more chill than Nacho is. This is a team that has had a fire lit under them, and you can tell. And it's not just Nacho. Reget is leading from his position as well. And yeah, for those who wrote off the Comets in the middle of that losing streak and said their season is over and Baltimore is going to pass them and yada yada yada, making fun of Stokic era, etc. Um, if you want to play this team in the playoffs, good luck.
Yeah, and that was a winless streak, not a losing streak. Just
Same. Yeah, I hear you. I hear you. Yep.
um, I just had to do that because I know I
I
got
know
some
you did.
criticism.
Yep.
2 points after from what you said, I want to continue on the passion and that helping lead the team. Christian Anderaos is right in that same mold. Doesn't score as many goals as Zach, but he is a guy who loves to play, is passionate about it, and I think he's just getting better and better as each year goes on. I mean, we already talked about him a little bit, but I think just that emotion and firing up the team, he's that guy that helps lift it also.
Well, so I'll connect some dots here. There's a target forward on a rival team to the Comets who will go unnamed, who made fun of Stokic as a coach, saying all he was a defensive runner. If you look at what Andreas has done primarily as a defensive runner, he can change games, and he proved that on the game Sunday against UCFC. I think you go back to Vlatko Andonovski as head coach in terms of who are the guys he wanted on his team, and he would include Stepan Stokic as one of the absolute players you need to have because it's attitude, it's competitiveness, it's fire, it's all that, and there's some intangibles there. You mentioned Reget, et cetera. Is you want guys who are going to lift their teammates up even in the bad times. You want guys who are going to want to stoke the crowd. And you see what Cable Dahmer Arena's atmosphere is like compared to most arenas around the league. It's electric. I give UCFC sort of the second place for electricity. And I know it gets loud there up at the Adirondack Bank Center, but I can't recall, it's been years being in an environment as loud as it was for that St. Louis game a couple weeks ago at Cable Dom Arena. It was just unbelievable in terms of the atmosphere there, and the players feed off of that. And they know when they're at home, they're going to have a crowd that's 100% behind them.
And the more those players can fire up the crowd, the more the crowd fuels the players. It's I'm trying to think of the right phrase for it, but they feed each other and it gets good results when it goes that way.
Right.
I'm gonna throw another shout out there. I was talking to Christian last night and about how he was doing, and then he gave credit to Jacob Garza and the amount of progress that he has made this year. And he's been working with him to help him learn that position better. And I just going to see if you saw the same thing. And I know you have seen Mr. Garza play before.
I have seen Mr. Garza play before, both in high school and college, and the minutes he's getting, he's earned.
Yep.
I think that is something that Bud said on the broadcast too. So, in addition to Garza, Henry Ramirez came back. He's been dealing with hamstring issues, and so when you get those young legs in the midfield, it really changes the attitude of this team. You can press a lot more, you can run back and forth a lot more, and I think that's the type of team Stefan Stokic wants to have. He talked at the beginning of the season of we need to do better and we need to own the transition game. Well, if you're going to own the transition game, you need to be able to run the transition game. And we saw Anderaos doing it. You see some of these other guys. They definitely have missed Ramirez being out. They've missed Lalo being out, but they're getting to the point where there's more health rather than less health on this roster, and that's the place you want to be in heading into the playoffs.
And I'm going to throw in that I really like Garza when I saw him in like tryouts for the team and preseason camps trying to earn a spot, 2 years ago. I think that was. And I appreciated how he worked, and he was a very good like if you a game of Rondo where you're playing keep away, he would be the guy who would steal the ball. I mean, he was the one that was just really good at it, and other drills he was just so good at it. So I was hoping he would make a spot and become a competition for the defensive runner spot at that time. And so I'm just glad he's getting that time now because I think he's earned it, like you said, and he's still got a lot of room to grow, but I'm just really happy for that guy.
Well, and he's not going to be muscled. He's been known as a gym rat, and he's not going to be easy to push off the ball too. So a lot of different options there for Coach Stokic, and the pieces are coming together, which is good because now you look ahead. This is my transition. That now you look ahead to two more games and try to figure out how do we take our 39 points with two games left and max it out at 45, because that's the next task at hand is put yourself in a position to potentially not have to play Monterey in that first round.
All right. One last comment before we move to that transition. That was a very good attempt, Eric, but I'm not
I
as
tried.
organized as you.
I tried.
Um, it was annoying me last night in the fourth quarter specifically. I was behind the goal, shooting out through the net, uh, while they were trying to defend the essentially a six attacker the entire fourth quarter. But it was just annoying me a bit that the goalie was wearing green with black and the referees were wearing green with black, and I'm literally shooting out, and it's got to be a difficult thing to defend when you're watching, when you don't, because you're looking at colors out of the corner of your eye, things like that. It was very annoying. They should not have allowed that.
I've heard a few people complain specifically about Utica this year in terms of the goalie colors, and Bud made a comment about whether there was a seventh or eighth attacker on the field because he had that problem too, distinguishing between the Utica goalkeepers and Ryan Sigich and Daniel Radford.
Yeah, it's either they should be wearing a penny or the refs should have a change of color that doesn't conflict. Something should have been different there. Again, it didn't cost them in this game, but I could see very well how somebody watching for a defensive somebody making a run, or even I would complain if I was on Utica's team because you're seeing somebody out of the corner of your eye and you make that pass. maybe pass to the ref instead of the.
If you think about referees' uniforms in the MASL, you have the traditional blacks, you have the reds, and you have the greens, right? What color was Utica wearing yesterday?
Black,
What color was Kansas City wearing yesterday?
red.
So they decide, okay, then we have to wear the greens, and then Utica brought green goalies jerseys. So yeah, I mean, I see the challenge, but that was process of elimination is what got the referees to wearing green yesterday.
I get that, but
Yeah.
then make the ref or make the goalie wear a penny or change
Oh, there
colors.
you go. There you go.
They could have put on a six attacker jersey the entire game. I don't care. All right, looking forward. Finally, going back to your good
There you
transition that
go.
I totally ruined. Looking forward, how can the Comets maximize that and hopefully move up in the standings?
So let's talk about what Kansas City has to do, and then we can talk a little bit about what might have to happen to the other teams. So Kansas City goes to St. Louis on Sunday. St. Louis has had, I mean, challenging year is an understatement. They were in the shootout against Milwaukee yesterday and thought they were in the lead and got a goal taken away because of a challenge, and that a ball that Lucas Almeida had put at the yellow line was too far forward. Milwaukee challenged it, won the challenge. He retook it, and then Almeida did not connect, and Milwaukee wound up winning. So it feels like every time they've had a chance, something happened. They had Kansas City beat here a couple weeks ago. Berto hits a ball off the boards, bounce off of Briggs, goes in the goal. Lucas Souza got credit for it with less than 4 seconds left. So it's been that kind of year for St. Louis. This team still wants to beat Kansas City. So you can't walk in there thinking the ambush are going to be a pushover at all. And so Kansas City just has to play better there than they did last time. We talked about them being relatively healthy. They're definitely adjusting their practice schedule this week, so I think they should be well rested for that game, and just try to minimize the mental mistakes. Kansas City is technically tied with UCFC at 39 points, but KC's played two more games, so I think it's fair to call them the fourth place team. Kansas City, what they need to do is win both. I think it's going to be really difficult to try to catch UCFC. UCFC has 4 remaining games, 3 of which are at home. And if you walk through who do they have to play? They play Harrisburg on Sunday. UCFC should win that. Then they have back-to-back games at home the following week against St. Louis. Should probably win those too. They'll end the season at Baltimore on the 30th. And so UCFC should have at least 9 points out of those games. So I don't see any way Kansas City catches them. The trick is Milwaukee. Milwaukee dropped a point to St. Louis yesterday. So they played one fewer game than Kansas City and are up by 2 points. But if you look at where they have remaining, they go to Dallas this Sunday. Theoretically, Milwaukee should win that, right? But Dallas won a game this week at Harrisburg. You never know what's going to happen. And then Milwaukee has to host the 16-time champion San Diego Sockers on the 22nd before getting on a plane the next day and flying to Monterey to play the undefeated Flash. It's very likely they don't win at all in Monterey, right?
Right.
It's going to be a hard game against San Diego. So even if they win all 3 points at Dallas, there's a lot of pressure on them. And so if you do the math in your head, there's a lane here for Kansas City to leapfrog Milwaukee. But you got to win your games.
Right. Probably a better chance for them to leapfrog Milwaukee than actually to catch Utica, which
Yeah. So, but let's play that out, okay? Utica has arena problems. Utica is hosting the women's ice hockey international championship, and so they may have to get creative with their series in terms of do they give up home field advantage just based on the dates that they have available. And so if you're Kansas City, having the potential of that against Utica may be way more attractive than the potential of a more traditional series against Monterey. But we'll see. A lot can happen over the next few weeks.
And we will see. It's going to be a little bit crazy, I think, this last couple weeks.
Well, I mean, the most important thing, make the playoffs. And really, if you're wanting to be extremely optimistic, last year they finished in 5th place, and because of the format, they got into the playoffs in a wild card game. The wild card was eliminated this year, and so this has been an improvement over last year. But if you go back to where they were when they were 7-1, I think that this is not how a lot of people envisioned the season would end, but it definitely has been better the last couple weeks, and this is more of what we saw at the beginning of the season.
Yeah, and beginning of the season, it was a big question of whether they could continue, and it was, who they were playing, and we knew it was going to be tough in that middle stretch. So I think this is the team that we have. I think it's a team that we saw from the first stretch could be. I think it still has a lot of room to grow, but the trade deadline, the roster deadline is coming up here shortly on the 14th. I doubt that there's any moves made for the
Uh,
Comets.
I haven't, let me just answer it this way, Thad. I haven't seen any, no, let me say it a different way. Have there been murmurings of potential moves? Yes. Have I seen or heard any signs that anything is going to actually happen that would positively impact the Comets? No. But a lot could happen in 3 days.
Yeah, and I kind of heard it. Yes, there have been talks, but there's a lot of doubt to whether or not coach would want to make any changes at this point. Because if you added and just like a total speculation kind of thing, if you added a goal scorer from another team, just to boost your offense a little bit, are they going to come in and be doing that running that he's expecting from everybody? Are they going to come in and be able to mesh with, or why would you want to mess with Zach, Rion, and Christian up there right now? You know what I mean?
No, I think that's fair. And I mean, if any team right now, their questions, do they make moves? And I asked Bud this on air against UCFC, is with all the injuries UCFC has, and you don't know how serious some of these injuries are, they might be in the market to make a move or two just because of depth. But
Right.
a lot can happen until the trade deadline.
And if I think if the Comets were going to add any depth at this point, it'd probably be somebody in the midfield. Just, but you have some of those young guys getting back and getting healthy that they were counting on earlier in the year.
That's right. I'll say this: if Zach continues, I mean, you're not going to get 4 goals a game from Zach, but if Zach continues to score and Rion continues to score and Lucas Souza continues to score, that's the triangle that you need that can take you a long way.
Yep. Another question that we had to Zach last night because he's talking about how he'd had to do better because he was only scoring a goal a game. I'm like, there's a lot of people that'd be happy with scoring a goal a game. I mean, this is why you're so good is you have like much higher expectations. He goes, everybody that's at the top of the scoring chart should have higher expectations, and so I think he's one of those guys that he's not going to settle for just scoring a goal and assist a game.
Well, and where he sits now, keep in mind, not every team has played the same amount of games, but he's leading the league in points right now with 43. He's leading the league with goals with 31. And you could make the strong case that how Zach goes, Kansas City goes, and you could definitely make an MVP case for him. I think that he's definitely up there in the running. Uh, Genaro Castillo, the Pink Panther from Monterey, has had a terrific season too. So
Yep.
a lot could still happen. Berto continues to lead the league in blocks, and so he'll get consideration for Defender of the Year. I'm not sure he gets it, but I think a lot of voters will be swayed by that. And he missed a few games too, so imagine what that could be. And right now, Neto is leading the league in saves. it's hard to know where people or how people are going to vote for goalie of the year. I think that Berna Valdovinos with 15 wins on an undefeated team will get a lot of consideration, but there are several Comet players in the mix for postseason awards, and we'll see where the voters go.
Speaking of Neto, and I know we're running a little bit out of time here, a couple minutes. Neto's caught a lot of flack throughout the last couple years from fans at times, and he has made some mistakes this year, but he also played a very strong game. I felt, I know he ended up in the box a couple times, and that led to a couple goals, but I thought he actually had a really good game. And to get a great appreciation for goalies, stand behind them behind the net. And I was there when essentially Utica was, like I said, doing the six attacker the entire thing, and I could see what he could see. And even though some of those shots were blocked, he was in the spot. He would have made the save if that ball had come through.
Yeah, I mean, if you're going to criticize Neto this year, I think it's for the different things than what people have been criticizing him
Right.
for. It's the distributions have been more challenging this year, and so I mean that's what I would look at. But in terms of his save ability, he's now, oh, by the way, for this Comets team, he has the record last year for most saves in a season. This year, he just topped Danny Waltman. He's second in saves. So I mean, he's coming through in a clutch for this team for certain. What gets me, and this is my goalkeeper bias, is the Comets have missed all sorts of shots this year, and they missed a couple gimmies
Yes.
against Coughlin yesterday. Nobody seems to be saying bench so and so for missing a wide open goal, but it comes with a goalkeeper category, and I think it's because of Neto's personality that he attracts criticism from Comets fans in terms of, oh, we got to bench him, or oh, it's his fault when he makes a mistake. That same logic is not applied across the roster. We've talked about some of the defensive challenges over the year.
Right.
Nobody's been picking on the defenders. Nobody's been calling out forwards for missing goals, and yet it's all Neto's fault. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know, and that was not what I was saying. I
No,
was
I know, no,
defending
I
him.
know you're reporting. I'm just reporting back that I think that if Comets fans were wanting to be equally objective and equally critical, there's enough blame and responsibility to put across the roster. But on the flip side, there should be enough credit put across the roster. And this
Absolutely
team
agree.
does not make the playoffs without Nicolau Neto in goal. I'm just telling you that right now.
Totally agree. All right, we are out of time, and I appreciate it, Eric. Any last words, very quickly?
Big game Sunday. Cannot overlook the ambush. Come back home with 3 points and take a look at the scoreboard.
And we are out.